Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water, we are back. It's on second thought.
Mhm.
Had a nice little summer vacation. Kids are back in school, and the big boys are back in the building. Said Golden here with the Houston Chronicles, Kirk Bohls for episode 366. And we're jumping in with both feet. Duck, how's it going?
And glad to meet you, Cedric. Always wanted to meet you.
Well, uh, I'm not Roy Rogers, but I'm glad you met me. But college football is back. Texas v. Ohio State, top five showdown, top two, depending on the poll you follow. 11 a.m. Saturday, big noon on Fox. It's a college football semifinal playoff rematch, and perhaps the first of two meetings this season. So, Duck, we had to bring in the big dog. Tim May is the longtime journalist laureate for the Ohio State Buckeye football coverage. He was a fixture at the Columbus Dispatch for decades, and he's still the longest tenured journalist covering that beat. Austin has Kirk Bohls. Columbus has Tim May, who's also the face of the Tim May Show, brought to you by FanStreamSports.com. Tim, it's so good to see you. And I have one question for you. Since you've covered Ohio State for so long, do you get that free Chipotle? And how do we sign up for that?
No, I don't get free Chipotle. I don't want to get into one of my experiences with Chipotle. That would maybe get if they're a sponsor of your show, it might get them cast off. But no, you get as you well know, Cedric, excuse me, and Kirk. You take nothing for free, at least on the record, so to speak, right? And so because you got to cover these things. I mean, the last time I saw you guys. Um, Kirk Bohls was a fixture of the Austin American-Statesman. Now he's a fixture of the Houston Chronicle. And it's crazy. Cedric, you are who you are, you who you've always been, wearing that nice scarlet shirt today for this interview. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we finally got rid of him, Tim, and but he's like crabgrass. If you
Yes.
those weeds, you mow your yard, and then 2 days later, you're like, I thought I mowed. That
The
crap,
only thing growing is the crabgrass.
it
Yeah.
keeps growing, and I don't know how to get rid of it. We need
Yeah,
some. We
I'm
need
the
some
nightmare that keeps
Roundup.
on giving. The nightmare that keeps on giving.
That
So,
is exactly right.
well, Tim, great to be with you, man. And let's get right to it. Is Texas got a chance at hell to win this game? Poor little Texas coming into the shoe. You give Texas any chance at all?
Well, I've told people they ought to nickname the shoe just for this one. You know how you come up with, this is well, it's always been the era of nicknames as far as I'm concerned, but they should call it the slaughterhouse. You know what I mean? Because here come these Longhorn. Is a Longhorn a bull or a steer? I've never been figured it out. My baby brother, who's going to be 68 in a few months, he has a little weekend ranch outside LaGrange. You know where LaGrange is,
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and
chicken ranch.
Texas there, and he's got a couple of Longhorn bull steers there that he named after. I think one of them's named Bear after Bear Bryant because he's a huge Alabama fan, and I can't remember the other one's name because he's a replacement for the one that kept busting through the fence to get to the cows in the neighbor's land across the way there, across the fence there. But it's I think it's yeah, of course Texas got a chance. Fellas, I've never been more because I had a really great sense Ohio State was going to figure out a way to beat Texas 8 months ago, just because of the way Ohio State was playing, etc. And the defense had really come into its own. But I really don't have a feel for this game. I had a buddy of mine I was just talking to from one of the TV stations here in town, Channel 10, named Adam King. And the word he keeps coming up with, he expects this to be a clunky game. And you know what clunky means? Meaning, number one, it's going to be two damn good defenses, talent wise, running around out there, but two defenses that have replaced so many key players, Ohio State especially, with 8 starters gone to the National Football League. But they have so many guys back who played a lot last year, including on that goal line stand that really decided the game. And offensively, both of them have first time full time starting quarterbacks. I know Arch Manning started against Mississippi State and who was it, Texas State or Texas San Antonio, somebody like that. Who did he start with? Huh?
Was it UTSA, Duck? Oh,
No, it's ULM.
oh,
One.
it was
Oh,
Louisiana.
excuse me. I knew it was
Yeah.
I knew it was a name after a city, University of Louisiana Monroe, and and we all know Toledo bushwhacked Mississippi State, and Texas kind of struggled. You're where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
You're just I think Arch Manning is a hell of a talent. I agree with everybody. That many people can't be wrong. Maybe Paul Feinbaum's way wrong, but we'll get to that some other time. But the bottom line is there's so many question marks about these teams that you just think, number one, they've got really good defenses. They're going to take away what you really want to try to do right out of the gate, which is run the ball and maybe hit the big play over the top. Now what are you going to do? So that's why clunky, I think, is the right word, because they're going to, just like that last meeting, fellas, this is going to be a big play. This game's going to turn on big plays, and it's going to be crazy. And you think you're going to have a handle on it, but you don't. But yeah, I think Texas got a hell of a shot. 2-point underdog. Now we all know that Texas has never won in the Slaughterhouse, aka Ohio Stadium, but they only played there once. But of course, Ohio State's never won. Ohio State, Texas has never beaten Ohio State in the state of Texas. So who
That's
knows
true.
what that means? I don't think that means much of anything, to be honest with you.
That is true. They did beat them in Arizona, though. But
Well, yeah, but not the state of Texas. They were
yeah,
just there. I don't know if you remember, said, because it was so long ago, 8 months ago. That was in Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium, and it was predominantly, well, it was like 60-40 Texas fans. Don't you agree? Maybe.
yeah, but man, Ohio State
True.
travels so well. They do.
Yeah.
And I got to say this. Nothing says old like a 68-year-old baby brother. I mean,
Yeah,
I've never felt younger than I do right now.
there you go,
Uh,
baby. That's why I always say it.
man. Well, Julian Sayin is the other first time full time starting quarterback in this game. Arch Manning has the Heisman hype, the family pedigree, the ESPN centerpieces like the one we'll discuss with our next guest, Dave Wilson of ESPN. But Julian has the eyes of the Big Ten and Columbus upon him as he takes over for Will Howard. If you would tell us something that we don't know about Julian Sayin.
You probably know this, but because you heard your coach talk about it. But I mean, he was considered a dual threat quarterback coming out of Carlsbad, California, not just a drop into the pocket and fire. Uh, but I've been covering Ohio State for 40, it's going to be the 42nd season, and he's got the best release of any quarterback I've covered. I'm talking about quick release. Troy Smith was pretty damn good. Dwayne Haskins Jr. Had that pistol from the year, but Julian Sayin's got that too, man. And when he makes up his mind to throw the ball, most of the time it's on the money. Now, most of the time we've seen him play, he's been under very little duress, right? Because the last thing you want to do is get your quarterback banged up in preseason. They did put both quarterbacks who were going for the starting job, he and Lincoln Keenholz, were put under the gun in the spring a little bit with live jerseys. And I remember there was one scramble that Julian Sayin had right up the middle on one play there in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center indoor field, and a fellow by the name of Riley Pettijohn. That should ring a bell for any Texas fans because he's from the great state of Texas. Freshman linebacker lit him up, and Julian Sayin jumped right up and ran the next play. So, I mean, he's got some toughness about him. He's really gotten a lot, for one of another term, larger than a year ago. Whenever it's like you get your first impression of a guy. He looks a little bit shortish and a little bit lightish, and that's the one that sticks in your head. When in fact he's about 6'1", and now weighs about 211, 212. Is much stronger than he was this time a year ago. He's got what's known as a budding body by Marotti. Mick Marotti, the Ohio State's famous strength and conditioning coach. He's been in that system for a year, and you can tell it. Just like Lincoln Keenholz was a 3-4 sport athlete when he came in out of Pierre, South Dakota. The guy that he beat out for the job, and now he's like 6'3", 215, 220. Whereas he was like 185, 190 showing up. So the older you get in college football, if you're showing up for the conditioning and strength classes, you're going to get a lot bigger. So he's got that going for him, and but he's pretty much the guy that you get the idea. If there's four guys sitting in a room, he'd be the last guy to just sit up and crack a joke. Okay, now it's your turn to tell a joke, Julian. We'll see how that goes. The joke may be on all of us on Saturday, but I just like the way he goes about his business. I've had his high school coach on the Tim May show a couple of times, Thad McNeil, because he he also owns a pizza place there in Carlsbad, California. And think about the coaches that went through that place, in the couple of years before Julian Sayin picked Alabama over Ohio State. Sarkisian in Texas were interested in him for
Yes.
obvious reasons because he's a talent, and that's what stands out is most of the ballyhoo is about Arch Manning in this game, but the Elite 11 showed that Julian Sayin can pretty much play with anybody.
Well, don't you think, and you're right about the defenses. I don't like hearing clunky because then I think about 10-7.
Yeah.
Uh, and I
That's
think it's
not
be
happening, sir.
a
That's
little higher score than that. But don't you think Texas' whole deal was make Julian say and beat them,
Oh yeah.
and so I would imagine Ryan's looking at, maybe throwing 20 passes if he can get away with that and dominate with run game and defense. Who are the running backs that are going to replace Judkins and Trevion Henderson, who really kind of ran loose on Texas?
Hey, y'all's studio, whatever you call this. How far is that from the north end of San Antonio?
Oh, we're about 75 miles from San
Yeah.
Antonio. Yeah,
James Peoples, as I call him, the People's Choice,
yeah.
is from Veterans Memorial High School there. I've been to it. I interviewed him there a couple of years ago when he committed to Ohio State, and he reminds you, fellas, and I don't mean to bring up LaGrange again, and my baby brother who's going to be 68. Uh, I just love that line. Um, it reminds you a lot of J.K. Dobbins,
look out
who's from
now.
LaGrange, and
Yeah.
and the former Ohio State football coach John Cooper used to have that line: if a dog's going to bite you, he's going to bite you as a pup. That was his
Exactly.
line, right? And
Yep.
well, Jace Peoples has been around now for a year. He was a freshman last year, as you well know. He's much bigger, stronger than he looked a year ago. But he reminds me a lot, not exactly alike. I think he's a little bit bigger, really, than J.K. Dobbins. But J.K. Dobbins, all he did was set the school single season rushing record finally with over 2,000 yards rushing for Ohio State a few years ago before he went to the National Football League. James Peoples reminds me of him because if James Peoples gets out in the open, he can also finish, or at least he's proven that. Turn on the highlights from high school, and then they've got a running back C.J. Donaldson who played for West Virginia the last couple of years. Was I think West Virginia's leading rusher last year. He wanted another challenge, and even though Rich Rodriguez is retaken over the West Virginia job. C.J. Donaldson jumped in the portal and signed up with Ohio State. He's lost a little bit of weight, but he's also a running and pass catching threat out of the backfield. And then, by the way, the third string running back for Ohio State, a name you've never heard of, Bo Jackson. you can't, you can't
Really?
make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. So they feel he's a freshman, true freshman. If in fact that's a term anymore, is that a term still? If you come in January, are you a true freshman? Not when I know not when Kirk and I were growing up, but the bottom line is, James Peoples has been there for a year. Bo Jackson has been there for 3/4 of a year. C.J. Donaldson has played and played very well for West Virginia. They feel pretty good about their running backs, but the main thing they feel good about, Ryan Day's even said it, the depth of the offensive line room probably has never been better. Definitely in his 7 years as the Ohio State head coach, and maybe going back a long ways. I agree with him on that. And nowadays, they've got Tyler Bowen as the offensive line. I call it the offensive line coordinator because they've got a couple of other, what do you call those kind? They're not GAs anymore. They're, what do you call it?
Quality
Program
control.
assistants. Huh?
Quality control or
Yeah, quality control or program assistants now who are
yeah.
extremely talented, who are helping coaches. Like every offensive lineman almost has his own coach now. And they feel really good about the way this offensive line has come around and kind of the way it's been reshaped. They've got the core of it back, the center and the two guards, the center Carson Hinsman, and the two guards, Luke Montgomery on the left side, Tegra Shabola on the right. And if people down in Texas forget who they were the wedge for Trevion Henderson on that screen to the house, that house call he made at the end of the first half there that really flipped that game again last year, 8 months ago. in Jerry World. So those guys are back, and then you'll have a new starting left tackle. Looks like it's going to be Austin Serveld, who was also elected one of the captains of the team. We thought he was going to be the right tackle. Turns out he's going to be the left tackle, it looks like. And then two transfers at the end of camp look to be battling for the right tackle job. Ethan Anianwa from right there at Rice. He was at Rice the last couple of years, a mountain of a guy and a mound of rice. And then Philip Daniels, a transfer from Minnesota, who grew up in near Cincinnati. So they feel really good just about their offensive line group, plus the depth behind those starters. So, yeah, they're going to try to run the ball. Brian Hartline, the new play calling offensive coordinator, he's been there for many years. So I guess 7th year in the program, I think, or 8th year in the program. He'll be calling the plays. Wide receiver coach, renowned, but he really believes in the run game. And everybody saw what the run game did for Ohio State in the playoffs, especially last year. Ryan Day definitely wants some more of that. Give me some more of that.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Ryan Day, and he's a made man now, and he's got a national championship. It's something John Cooper didn't do, Earl Bruce didn't do it. He's in that rarefied air with Woody
That's
Hayes,
a good way of putting it.
Urban Meyer, and Jim Tressel. I stole that made man
I like that.
from Kirk Bohls. I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. A broke watch is right twice a day. Congrats on that line, Kirk.
There you go. I like that
But
line.
I gotta ask. I mean, because we've got good friends who are Ohio State fans. Kevin Lytle is a longtime Ohio State fan from Cleveland, and John Agee, guys we worked with for many years. They are giddy that Ohio State won a championship, but they still, in their craw, they still wonder, is he ever gonna beat Michigan? Does he get some grace because since he won that natty? But it's been over 2,000 days since they beat the Maize and Blues. So what's the temperature when it comes to that rivalry, even though I know we're talking about Texas today?
Are we using one of those laser temperature detectors, or are we going to use one of those things in a bulb, the red stuff that comes up the mercury?
I think the
Uh,
Mercury is good. Let's do the Mercury.
Old school.
by the way, this is a kind of a dark gray shirt, but it's showing up blue
It
on
looks
my
blue.
screen. I don't know if it is on y'all's
No,
It
screen.
dude,
looks
that is
blue.
that
That's
that is showing up royal blue, and it's great.
that's
It is a good
that's
color on you, Tim May.
yeah, that's how much that blue is permeating everything, right? I mean, the
But your
the
but your
thoughts of
hair
it.
your hair is showing up orange, so
Yeah,
that's
I know. Isn't that funny? That's pretty
Texas.
funny. I grew up in Lufkin, and three of my best buddies went to Texas A&M. So I won't get into where I lay on that regard. But the bottom line is, of course, I mean that's now the elephant in the room. You know the you slay. Elephants usually come in herds. And so he got rid of one of those elephants last year without a doubt. And
Yes, sir.
that's the beauty, fellas. I don't know if you agree or not. I mean, you're never going to downplay the import. I like to say import instead of the importance.
I
You're
like
never
it.
going to downplay the import of Ohio State, Michigan, the greatest rivalry in sport. Just like you're never going to downplay the import of Texas A&M, although they decided not to play each other for those many years until Texas backdoored their way back into the Southeastern Conference, and Texas A&M never saw them coming. Hey, Texas A&M, by the way, they're up drinking with all their buddies up at the bar. You're never gonna believe who just walked in the back door. That's the way that went down, wasn't it?
Yep,
Pretty much.
please. Yep.
That had to be crazy.
Pretty much.
DeLoss Dodds. Is DeLoss Dodds still with us, by the way?
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah. He's
absolutely.
Yeah,
still
I
Doing
know.
well.
I was
Doing
gonna say
well.
he's got to be spinning around, but he's just
yeah.
spinning around anyway. But my point is, yeah, that's the next. That comes before defending your national championship for Ohio State. That's in line now, and it's a big important thing. But of course, the Connor Stallions gate, whatever you want to call it, the scandal. Anybody that doesn't think that was a big deal, doesn't know anything about football,
They're not
Thank
because
watching.
that was
thank
a scandal that affected how games were played,
Of
not
course.
who you got into the transfer portal or in recruiting, or whether you got free tattoo, or whether you traded gold pants for free tattoos. I mean, you know what I mean? Or I guess they weren't free because you were trading gold pants. This was a different level of cheating when it expressly said you couldn't do this, and you did it anyway. And yes, it had to be condoned by the head coach, Jim Harbaugh. Or why would it have continued? He definitely wasn't, uh, whatever the word is you want to use there, shocked by it by any stretch. Shouldn't have been, since this guy was standing next to your offensive coordinator one possession, your defensive coordinator the next. Point is, that excuse is gone. If in fact you use it as an excuse, they got beat. They just straight up got beat last year.
Oh
They
yeah.
did.
I mean, that was an upset of upsets.
Yeah.
Ohio State was a 13-point favorite, and the game plan offensively, as Ryan Day admitted, and Chip Kelly basically admitted, that was a fail. I mean, that was a fail. Whatever it was a fail. And so, yeah, you've got to get that. And now, of course, the game is at Michigan this year. But I'm telling you, opening with Texas, uh, uh, opening with Texas, you host Penn State this year, but you play at Washington. Yeah, Jetfish in Washington, they're still trying to find themselves, but at Washington is always a challenge. And then you go to Illinois, which is a challenge, which basically finished ahead of Ohio State in the Big Ten rankings when you really sized it up last year. Ohio State was like fourth in the Big Ten last year. And then at Wisconsin with Luke Fickell, yeah, I know he's got a new contract, but he's going to be fighting for his respect more than anything else. And then if you play host Penn State and then play at Michigan, that's a hell of a schedule, whether the SEC and Greg Sankey want to admit it.
I'm glad you mentioned the Spygate scandal, and Harbaugh's just been so remorseful about it.
Yeah, I know he is.
He's
So
just
smart.
really
It's so smart.
apologetic. And
Yeah, it looked like he keeps him up at night when he's
oh
sleeping in the camper, wherever that is, where the Chargers
yeah,
practice.
And if
and
they
and
could
you're
get
and you're
away
right.
with it, they could get away with it, they do it again. I mean,
Oh, you know it.
because history
Well,
remembers
here's the
the
thing.
winners.
Yeah.
You guys have been around this game as long as I have. You never really know what's going on, right?
No.
Nope.
If you pull the covers back on a lot of these major programs, the cockroaches that would run out would be probably crazy. I told an athletic director 10 or 15 years ago that, if you pull the covers back everywhere, there might not be so much of a clamor for players to get paid. You understand what I'm saying? Because it probably was going on a lot more than
Oh,
anybody will ever admit. How they
Absolutely.
get everybody to stay secretive about it was always it's always been my intrigue of the whole thing, because well, we're holier than thou, right? And y'all know about when SMU got caught. SMU claimed, well, Texas has been doing this forever. You just don't have the guts to go after Texas. Blah blah blah, right on down the line. Who knows what the real truth was about all that? But you're right. No matter what it was a blatant breaking of a rule that's in the NCAA rule book. Is what Michigan was found guilty of. Now they did some other things in recruiting during the COVID cycle and all that kind of stuff. That was also part of that. The cheeseburger line, as you well know. But there was some stuff going on there they weren't supposed to be doing, and that was Jim Harbaugh to a certain extent also. So he's in the National Football League. He's a hell of a, in my opinion, he's a hell of a head coach.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's a hell of a head coach. So we'll see where he gets to. He's gotten to the Super Bowl once. He's won a national championship.
yeah. He didn't need to do that. Quite frankly, he didn't
I
need to.
dropped.
But they
See, I
did it
dropped the
anyway.
mic.
Did it anyway. And
Yeah. Well, when you're so desperate, like everybody now thinks Ryan Day is desperate to beat Michigan. Of course he is. But what I was getting to, and I never got to the point because that's the way I operate, I digress into oblivion, is Texas A&M doesn't mean as much as it did 30 years ago when I was 50 years ago when I was growing up in Texas. I moved up here in 1976. It doesn't mean as much as it did. Texas, Oklahoma doesn't mean as much as it did unless you lost to both of them, right?
Mhm.
Now please let me in the playoff. But the 12-team playoff is a salvation. Dude, 1996, 1998, at least Ohio State had football teams that probably would have won a 14 playoff or a 12-team playoff, but they lost one game each of those years. One time to Michigan in 96, and then the upset to Michigan State in 98. By the way, quick trivia quiz. Who was Michigan State's head coach?
in what year?
1998. This was the game that launched
That
him.
wasn't Nick Saban,
That
was
was
it?
definitely, it was
Was.
Nick Saban.
Was.
And next thing you know, he's at LSU, wins a national
Oh,
championship, goes to Miami, doesn't like it there, ends up back at in the SEC with Alabama and wins 6 national championships without the GOAT, you know. But the GOAT, that was the game that launched him. It was a great comeback and stuff. But my point is, those two Ohio State teams definitely could have won national championships. The 2015 Ohio State team that came back from after winning in 14 could have won that national championship. They had one loss. It was to Michigan State. It was the craziest game, as in stupid, you ever saw. But a 14 playoff, Ohio State, that team was better than the 14 team. So now you have salvation in the playoffs. And when it goes to 16, wow,
Yeah.
it'd be like in a Southern Baptist church, speaking of salvation.
Or 28 teams if the Big Ten has its way, right?
Who knows? I mean, did they, here's the question. Whenever you see something or hear something like that, did they really say that?
Yeah.
Hey, why stop there?
Well, why don't you decide where you're going next year before you decide where you're going to be in 30 years,
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Well, I can't wait to get to Wally World. Well, yeah, you got a hell of a trip on your hands here.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about Jeremiah Smith, what his vibe is, after having one catch for 3 yards in the Cotton Bowl.
Jeremiah Smith. I'm trying to recall who that is. I talked to him, had a little blurb. You can look it up on the internet if you want to, a little blurb I put up after the game with him talking about, he was disappointed during the game. He wasn't getting the ball. But then, I mean, the kid's mature. His maturity is stupid, how good it is. And, during the game, you want to be part of that game. I mean, as in affect that game, not just be a decoy, for want of another term. He really wasn't a decoy. I thought Texas just did a good job defensively in that game. If you go back, you're always going to shade somebody toward the other team's best receiver or most prolific receiver. But, one of those prolific receivers was Emeka Egbuka. Didn't take him away. Carnell Tate had probably his best game as a collegian, other than maybe the win at Northwestern in his hometown there in Chicago. But so you can't. That's the thing about Ohio State. All right, you lean, you take this guy away. Look out for that. Now Ohio State has a tight end in Max Clare, which is a seam buster. He played at Purdue last year. Go watch the video on that dude. That's why I always tell everybody when they question me about one thing or the other, about the offensive line, defensive line play, and all that kind of, go watch the video. Now go watch the video of Jeremiah Smith. There are quite a few times they could have thrown the ball to him in that game. I think they made up their mind that Texas was taking him away and kind of stuck with that because his only catch was like a little flare to the right, out of the backfield, and he got 3 yards. Jeremiah Smith, the greatest player in college football now, right? According to some people. Well, y'all remember when Reggie Bush, he wasn't on the field for USC's last play against Texas,
Nope.
Right? The Heisman Trophy winner wasn't on the field.
Reggie Bush. I don't
what kind of play was that?
Who was Reggie Bush?
Kirk was aghast because that was his favorite football player that year. Yeah.
I mean, crazy. But I digress. Bottom line is, he wants to have an impact on this game, and he's not keeping that a secret. I mean, he wants to have an impact on this game, and the way you have an impact, the best player and most dangerous player in offensive football in college football this year is to be on the field and be getting the ball in your hands. You got to figure they're going to figure out ways to get him the ball, just like they did against Oregon in that second game in the Rose Bowl last year when they just decimated Oregon. You got to figure Ohio State's going to figure out ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. But here's the thing, real quick. Everybody always asks me because I've been covering Ohio State forever. Where does he rank among receivers? Ohio State's had a ridiculous number of great receivers. Like crazy. Texas had Chris Carter. Santonio Holmes, Terry Glenn. I could name Joey Galloway. I could name you a million of them. But where he most reminds me, just physically a little bit, of Chris Carter in terms of he's a big guy. Yeah. He's bigger than Chris, really, but he's a big guy. But what he reminds me of Chris Carter is he has an innate sense of putting himself between the defender and the thrown football, which gives you a chance. And and he's not shy about contact. He loves the yards after catch. So I mean, he's the kind of guy, and I know he wants to have an impact on this game Saturday at high noon, 11 a.m. Central Time.
Tim May, always a pleasure. a fountain of knowledge and information. I wish we could have taped it while you had your Ray-Ban sunglasses on, in your
Hey, I
machine.
did one like that with Kirk Herbstreit one time where he was driving. He had his dog with him like 3 or 4 years ago, the one that passed away. And it was one of the great podcasts I ever did because I didn't care that he was like that, and neither did he.
I love it.
Well,
I love
check out the Tim May Show, guys, on
it.
mainstreamsports.com. Tim, can't wait to see you in Columbus. Always a pleasure, my brother. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, go Lufkin. That's all I got to say. Go Lufkin Panthers.
Head out to John Outlaw Stadium.
There you go.
I've been there many times.
It was an 11,000 seat stadium when they first built it in 1973. They care about high school football in the great state of Texas, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, they do.
We'll
Thank you,
see you
brother. We
soon, buddy.
appreciate it. Thanks,
You
man.
got it.